Have you ever done something so unforgivable that even time refused to bury it? He kept calling my name, but I ran. Those words echo in my mind every night, louder than the explosions that once filled the sky. This is not a story about war. It's about what war leaves behind, about the silence that follows when the gunfire fades, and the ghosts that whisper long after the battle ends. I was a soldier once. I believed in duty, in brotherhood, in survival, but there's a moment they don't prepare. The one where you have to choose between saving someone or saving yourself. You think you know what you'd do in that instant. You think courage will guide your steps, but when fear takes over, reason dies. And I learned that some choices don't end when the fight is over. They keep fighting inside you. He was more than a comrade. He was my friend, the kind of man who shared his last cigarette, who laughed even when death was a heartbeat away. And yet, in the middle of that chaos, I left him behind. His voice still haunts me. Don't leave me. 3 words that carved themselves into my soul. You've probably never been in a war, but maybe you've felt this kind of guilt, the kind that doesn't fade, the kind that lives in the quiet moments when you're alone, the kind that whispers, "You should have stayed." Have you ever felt that? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear isn't just a confession. It's a reminder that even the strongest hearts can break, that survival comes with a price, and sometimes that price is another man's life. I've carried this story for years, locked behind silence and shame. But tonight, I'll open the door I've kept closed for too long and let the truth finally breathe. Sometimes I wonder if telling this story will ever be enough to silence the echoes. Maybe it won't. Maybe it's not meant to. Maybe it's meant to remind someone out there, someone like you, that guilt is not always a curse. Sometimes it's proof that you still have a soul. If you've ever carried something heavy inside you, something you wish you could change, I want to hear it. Share it in the comments, not for me, but for the people who might read it and realize they're not alone. Stories like these connect us, even across screens, across miles, across time. What you write could reach someone who's been silent for years. And if this story touched you in some way, take a moment to like this video. It tells me that these voices, these confessions still matter, that we're not shouting into the void. And if you want to keep walking through stories like this, real, raw, and honest, subscribe, because this space is for those who've seen the light fade, but still believe it can return. The truth is, every click, every comment, every person who stays until the end, it all keeps this channel alive. It keeps these lost voices from being buried again. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, that night, the night I left him, the night everything I believed in collapsed beneath the sound of my own footsteps running away. The night was painted in smoke and fire, and every breath tasted like metal. The air trembled with explosions, the kind that make your bones remember long after the sound is gone. I can still see the silhouettes of men running through the dust, shadows of courage and fear mixed together. We weren't heroes out there. We were just trying to make it to the next sunrise. People imagine war as glory and purpose, but it's not like that. It's confusion, noise, and the feeling that everything familiar has been erased. We were brothers, not soldiers, and that brotherhood was the only thing that made sense in a world falling apart. I remember the smell of gunpowder clinging to our uniforms, the dirt beneath our nails, the heat pressing against our skin. The night before the ambush, we talked about going home, what we'd do, who we'd see, what we'd eat first. Small dreams kept us human, but in war, dreams are fragile things. They don't survive explosions, they shatter quietly without anyone noticing. When the first shots rang out, the world broke into fragments. There's no time to think in moments like that, just instinct. You move because stopping means dying. The sky was lit by flares, each one revealing faces twisted in panic. I can still hear his voice shouting my name over the chaos. It wasn't just a sound, it was a plea, and I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I was too human, too afraid. That's the truth most people don't want to hear. Sometimes fear is louder than loyalty. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because behind every action, every decision made under fire, there's a hidden truth, a battle inside the mind that no one sees. War isn't only fought with weapons, it's fought with decisions that rewrite who you are. It's transformation in its rawest form, the kind that breaks your old self and forces you to meet the version that survived. And survival, it always demands a price. You see, when everything around you collapses, your sense of right and wrong starts to blur. The mission, the orders, the rules, they all fade beneath the need to keep breathing. But deep inside, you always know. There's a moment when your soul whispers, this choice will change everything. And mine did. Tell me in the comments. Just one word. Loyalty. What does it mean to you? Before the world turned to chaos, there was peace, or at least something that felt close to it. The kind of peace you find in laughter shared between men who know they might not see another sunrise. I can still hear his voice, rough but full of life, echoing through the camp as we sat around a dying fire. We were exhausted, covered in dust, yet somehow the night felt lighter because of him. He had that rare ability to pull light out of darkness. He talked about home, his wife, his kid, the little garden he was going to build when the war ended. I listened, pretending I believed in that after. Maybe I wanted to. Maybe we both did. There was something sacred in those quiet hours before the mission. We weren't soldiers then. We were just two people trying to hold on to something real, something that made sense amid the madness. He gave me his last cigarette even though he'd been saving it for days. Said, "What good is saving anything here?" We laughed, and for a moment, the war disappeared. I didn't know that would be the last time I'd hear him laugh. Looking back, I realize how those small gestures, the shared rations, the jokes, the dreams, were more powerful than any weapon. They were the thin line that kept our humanity alive. When you're surrounded by destruction, the simplest acts of kindness become a kind of rebellion. It's strange, isn't it? How connection becomes your armor, how trust becomes your last piece of faith. He trusted me more than anyone. He said once, "If something happens, I know you've got my back." That sentence used to make me proud. Now it just burns, because in that single promise an entire world of loyalty was born and later destroyed. It's a cruel thing, how moments of warmth can turn into the coldest memories. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because the bond between us wasn't just friendship, it was a reflection of the human need for belonging, for meaning, even in the darkest places. War strips everything away, but it also exposes the truth beneath, the truth about what kind of person you really are when everything else is gone. That's the hidden battleground, the one no one talks about, the war inside. If you've ever lost someone you couldn't save, write the word memory in the comments. Sometimes a single word can carry a lifetime. It happened just before dawn when the world still felt half asleep. The air was heavy, too quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't last. I remember the soft hum of the wind against the tents, the faint clatter of weapons being checked. One last time. And then it came. The first explosion ripped through the stillness like a scream from the earth itself. Dirt and metal rained from the sky. In seconds, everything turned into noise, a chaos so loud it made the heart forget its rhythm. The ground shook beneath my boots, and the world blurred into flashes of orange and black. I could taste blood and smoke before I even knew where it was coming from. We didn't have time to think. Orders vanished into static, voices drowned by artillery. All that existed were instincts, raw, desperate, animal. My hands trembled as I gripped the rifle, not out of courage, but out of sheer terror. You always think you'll rise to the occasion, that you'll be the brave one. But the truth is, when death surrounds you, the only thing you really hear is the sound of your own breath, begging to stay alive. I saw him through the smoke, my friend, the one who always smiled even in hell. He was shouting something, pointing toward the ridge. Then the blast hit. I didn't see where it came from. I just remember the way his body twisted, the way the sound of his voice was cut off mid-word. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Everything froze. The noise, the fear, even the air. And then came the choice. It wasn't a grand decision made in clarity or honor. It was a flicker, a split-second instinct that no training, no oath, no friendship could stop. My legs moved before my mind caught up. I ran, not toward him, away. Away from the fire, away from the screams, away from what I didn't want to see. In that second I chose life over loyalty, and I've been living with that decision ever since. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because behind that moment of chaos lies the truth no one talks about, the truth about human fragility, about how survival can turn heroes into ghosts. It's not just the bullets that wound you, it's the decisions you can't undo. The battlefield doesn't end when the fighting stops. It lives on in the mind, replaying in fragments, whispering reminders of who you became when everything was on the line. If you've ever faced a moment that changed you forever, write the word choice in the comments. Some decisions never stop echoing, Time slowed into a narrow corridor where only two sounds existed, his voice and my breath. The smoke thinned just enough for me to see him on the ground, one hand pressed to his side, the other reaching toward me. His lips formed my name, the way a prayer forms in a dying chapel, soft, desperate, certain of nothing except the need to be heard. I remember the tremor in his fingers, the way the dirt stuck to his skin, the shine in his eyes that still believed I would come. It should have been simple. A step forward, a grip under his shoulders, a promise kept. But in that frozen frame, everything I thought I knew about courage unraveled. My legs moved before my heart could stop them. I ran, and the world narrowed to the sound of my boots against the earth, each impact a confession I couldn't speak out loud. There is a hidden truth in moments like that, a truth you don't see in training or strategy briefings. You imagine yourself as the man who turns back, the one who pays the price and becomes the story people tell. But fear is a master of disguise. It speaks in survival terms, it pretends to be wisdom, it reshapes your mindset until the unthinkable feels inevitable. I wish I could say I chose wrong after a long debate with myself, but there was no debate, only a reflex dressed up later as logic. That's the cruel machinery of decisions made under fire. The brain writes reasons to protect you from the guilt, while the soul keeps the original record. As I ran, every step carried a revelation I didn't want. I had become the kind of person I never thought I'd be. The transformation wasn't heroic. It was stark behind the scenes, a dark pivot, from loyalty to self-preservation. People ask about impact, about consequences, but the deepest, consequence is private. It keeps you awake, it edits your memories, it rewires your journey from the inside. You replay the scene, adjust the angles, search for a different ending, but the frame won't change. He is still on the ground. I am still moving away. The truth doesn't blink. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because what happened in that corridor of time wasn't just an accident of panic. It was the collision between instinct and identity. There's a cost when the story you tell. Yourself breaks under pressure, and it's paid with interest. Shame, silence, and a kind of exile that follows you into ordinary life. In the bastidores of every soldier's story, there are these fractures, these small private ruins that never make the official report. We build ourselves out of them, or we're buried beneath them. And the hardest part is accepting that both can be true. If a single word could hold your feeling right now, write forgive in the comments. I'm not asking it of anyone else, just asking whether the word still has a place in your vocabulary, the way I keep trying to find it in mine, as the night of that choice keeps unfolding into the present. When the noise finally faded, the silence felt unnatural, heavy, alive, like the air itself was ashamed to move. The battlefield was unrecognizable, stripped of shape and meaning. Smoke curled over the ground, carrying the faint smell of metal and blood. Every sound that reached me, a distant cry, a crackling fire, a single shell rolling across the dirt, felt foreign, as if the world had shifted into another dimension, one where language no longer worked. I stopped running, but the momentum inside me didn't. My heart was still sprinting, my lungs burned. My hands shook as though they were trying to erase what they had just done. For a moment, I thought about turning back, but the thought was fragile, born from guilt, not courage, and it died as quickly as it came. I found cover behind a half-broken wall and waited for the chaos to end. Minutes passed like hours. Every breath was a negotiation between fear and denial. I kept telling myself he was already gone, that going back wouldn't have changed anything. But even then, I knew it wasn't true. There's a truth hidden beneath every convenient lie, a truth that waits patiently for silence to return so it can be heard again. And in that silence, I could hear him. Not his voice exactly, but the echo of it, the memory of the last time he said my name. When rescue finally came, I walked among the survivors like a ghost. They congratulated us for making it out alive, but I didn't feel alive. I was breathing, yes, but something vital had collapsed inside me. It's strange how survival can feel like punishment. Everyone else saw a man who had endured. I saw a man who had left someone behind. That's the part no one tells you about war. You can escape the bullets, the explosions, the enemy, but you can't escape yourself. In the following days, I went through the motions, cleaning my weapon, eating in silence, pretending I still belonged. But my mind kept replaying that one image, his hand reaching out, his eyes locked on mine, the space between us stretching into eternity. Each replay made the scene sharper, crueler, as if memory itself wanted to make sure I never forgot. Guilt became a living companion, invisible yet constant, whispering through the cracks of every quiet moment. It followed me through dreams, through the laughter of others, through every dawn that reminded me I had another day he would never see. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because guilt doesn't vanish. It transforms. It becomes part of your identity, reshaping your thoughts, your mentalidad, the way you see yourself in the mirror. You start to understand that redemption isn't found in apologies or prayers. It's buried somewhere in the long journey of accepting who you became. Behind every soldier's medal, there's a hidden story like this. The truth behind the uniform. The invisible wound that never bleeds but never heals either. If you've ever carried something you couldn't forgive yourself for, write the word haunt in the comments. Sometimes the things that follow us are not ghosts. They're memories wearing our own face. Years passed, but time didn't move forward. It only circled back, looping around that same moment, like a curse that refused to fade. The war ended on paper, but not inside me. Peace was something people talked about in headlines, in parades, in polished speeches. For me, it was just a different kind of noise, quieter but sharper. I built a life after the battlefield, or at least a version of one. A small apartment, a job that didn't ask questions, a routine built carefully enough to keep the ghosts at bay. But no matter how normal I tried to look, I never stopped being that man who ran. Every sound of thunder pulled me back. Every sudden silence made me listen for a voice that wasn't there anymore. At night, the dreams came, always the same. Smoke, blood, his hand reaching toward me. I wake up drenched in sweat, my pulse hammering against a chest that doesn't want to feel. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm still in the dream or if the dream has simply learned to follow me into the daylight. The guilt aged better than I did. It learned to hide in smaller spaces, a reflection in the window, a stranger's voice, a scent of burned metal in the air after rain. The truth is, I never really left that place. I carried it here like a secret folded beneath my ribs. That's why I started recording these words. Maybe it's cowardice, or maybe it's my only way to breathe again. Writing this confession isn't about forgiveness anymore. It's about acknowledgement, about dragging the truth out of the dark and forcing it to stand in the light, even if it trembles. I've spent years pretending that silence could protect me, that if I didn't say it out loud, it would eventually stop existing. But silence doesn't heal, it festers. It turns into another battlefield, one fought in the mind instead of the mud. I sometimes imagine what he would say if he could hear me now. Maybe nothing at all. Maybe he'd just look at me the same way he did that morning, tired, kind, and a little bit amused at how naive I was. Or maybe he'd say the one thing I've never been able to tell myself, that it's over. But it isn't. Not yet. Because memory has its own rules. It doesn't fade, it transforms. It becomes part of your shadow, part of your identity. It follows quietly, reminding you that you can't rewrite the past, only face it. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because memory isn't just remembrance. It's the architecture of who we become after the collapse. It shapes our mentalidad, our decisions, the invisible map of regret and revelation we carry inside. There's a hidden truth in the act of remembering. It's both punishment and redemption. You relive the pain because it's the only way to prove it was real. And in a strange way, that pain becomes the last connection to the person you lost. If you've ever been haunted by something you can't forget, write the word remember in the comments. Sometimes remembering is the only way to keep the truth alive. I never planned to go back. For years I told myself that place belonged to another life, a different man, one who no longer existed. But the past has a way of calling you when you least expect it, softly at first, then louder, until you realize the only way to quiet it is to answer. So one cold morning, decades after the war had ended, I returned to the land where everything changed. The air was still thick with silence, and the ground, though covered in grass now, felt heavy under my feet, as if it still remembered the weight of what had happened there. The battlefield looked nothing like I remembered. The ruins had been cleared, the scars hidden beneath soil and time, but the echoes were still there, invisible yet present, whispers caught between the wind and memory. I found the place where he fell, though I wasn't sure at first. I just knew it by instinct, by the way my body tightened, by the sudden ache in my chest that told me I was standing on sacred ground. I knelt and pressed my hand to the earth. It was cold, unyielding. I wanted it to forgive me, to take something from me, the guilt, the shame, anything. But the ground stayed silent. Later, I visited his grave. They had buried him under a nameless stone. At first, but years later, someone had etched his name neat and clean, as if that could fix what had been broken. I brought nothing with me, no flowers, no medal, no letter, just the truth. I whispered it to the wind, that I was sorry, that I remembered, that every sunrise still felt like his last breath. The words didn't echo. They dissolved into the air like smoke. And maybe that was the point. Maybe redemption doesn't come as an answer. Maybe it's just the courage to finally speak. Standing there, I realized something I had avoided for years. Survival wasn't victory. It was a debt. Every morning I woke up was one more he never had. That realization used to feel like punishment, but now it felt different. Maybe survival isn't about being spared. Maybe it's about being tasked with carrying the story forward. His story, my failure, the truth between them. That's the real aftermath no one talks about, the hidden responsibility of the ones who made it out. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because redemption isn't a single act. It's a journey that reshapes you in silence. It's not about erasing what you did. It's about transforming the meaning of it. We talk about forgiveness as if it's a transaction, a moment of release. But real forgiveness is slower, quieter. It's a mindset, a discipline, a kind of daily surrender to the truth. And maybe, in some way, that's where the healing hides, not in the grand gestures, but in the small, invisible acts of honesty you repeat until they start to feel real. If you've ever stood in front of something you can't change and still tried to make peace with it, write the word redemption in the comments. Some words aren't just spoken, they're lived. War never truly ends when the last shot is fired. It lingers in the silence that follows, in the spaces no one talks about. The battlefield may be far behind, but its echoes stay carved inside the people who walked through it. I've learned that the real war is the one that keeps replaying in your mind, the war of memory, guilt, and unfinished prayers. It doesn't matter how many years pass or how much you try to rebuild yourself. The truth finds a way to resurface, not to punish you, but to remind you that being human is an imperfect act, one filled with contradiction, fear, and fragile moments of grace. When I first told this story, I thought it was about weakness, about a man who ran when he should have stayed. But now I see it differently. It's not only a confession, it's a reflection of what happens when humanity collides with survival. War strips away everything that isn't essential, and what remains isn't always noble. Sometimes it's raw instinct, sometimes regret, and sometimes it's just the need to keep breathing. Yet within that darkness there's something deeply revealing, a truth hidden beneath the shame, that we are all capable of both betrayal and compassion, both fear and forgiveness. It's what makes us human. Every soldier carries a version of this story, not the same details, not the same battlefield, but the same silence that follows. You start to understand that guilt isn't only a punishment, it's a form of remembrance. It's the mind's way of keeping the lost alive, and maybe that's why it never goes away. Because forgetting would be easier, but remembering is the only thing that gives meaning to what happened. Pain, when transformed, becomes connection, a bridge between the living and the ones who didn't make it home. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because the real message behind this confession isn't about death or war or even forgiveness. It's about understanding the cost of being alive. It's about realizing that survival changes your mindset, your morality, the way you measure courage. The truth hidden beneath all the noise is that healing doesn't come from forgetting what you did. It comes from facing it until it no longer controls you. That's the quiet transformation no one sees, the one that happens after the uniform is gone, after the medals are stored away, when all that's left is a man trying to reconcile who he was with who he's become. If you've ever carried something heavy and turned it into a lesson instead of a wound, write the word humanity in the comments, because in the end that's what all of this has been about. Not glory, not redemption, but the simple, painful, beautiful act of being human. There are moments when silence becomes heavier than words. You live your life, smile when expected, answer politely, and no one suspects that somewhere behind your calm eyes, a story keeps unfolding, one that never found its ending. I used to think secrets were meant to be buried, that locking them away was a kind of strength, but I've learned the truth hidden beneath that belief. The more you hide, the more it owns you. Secrets don't die quietly. They whisper. They echo in the spaces between breaths, in the way you hesitate before looking someone in the eye. Every person carries something untold, a choice, a loss, a moment they can't rewrite. We build layers to protect ourselves. Call it survival, call it dignity. But deep down, there's always that quiet longing for release, for someone to simply understand without judgment. The impact of keeping everything inside isn't just emotional, it reshapes who you are. It alters your mentality, your decisions, your way of seeing the world. There's a strange transformation that happens when truth stays caged. You become both the prisoner and the guard. Now I want to go even deeper into this, because maybe the act of confessing, even if it's just to the wind or into the silence of a room, is what keeps us human. Maybe speaking what haunts us isn't weakness, but a hidden form of courage, the kind that doesn't win medals but frees the soul. The journey to peace often begins where the words finally break through. If you ever carried a secret you couldn't tell, you're not alone. Write the word truth in the comments, not as an admission, but as a reminder that every hidden story deserves to breathe. If you're still here, listening to these words, it means this story found a way to reach you. Maybe because somewhere inside, a part of it feels familiar. That connection matters more than you think. It's what keeps stories like this alive, what turns silence into understanding. If this journey moved something in you, leave a comment saying, "I stayed until the end." It's a quiet way of letting me know you are here, walking through every moment with me. And if you believe in stories that reveal the truth behind what we hide, stories about humanity, forgiveness, and transformation, consider subscribing. That simple gesture tells me this space should keep existing, that it still has meaning. A like also helps more than you imagine. It's not about numbers, it's a sign that what you felt here mattered. There's another story waiting, one that continues this same reflection, just from a different angle. There's a video right here on the screen that complements everything we shared tonight. Click it and keep walking with me through the quiet places where truth still whispers.